Hi, I'm John Schweitzer, and with me today is Phyllis Michaelides. We've been international presenters, trainers, and storytellers for Xerox Corporation and other businesses and universities around the world for over 30 years each. Phyllis and I will tell you our stories and how we went from stage fright, which just like many of you may have today, to success as storytellers and trainers. We'll be sharing not only our experience and insights, but also those of highly successful people we've worked with from around the world. We want to help you so you can share your stories and succeed with your next presentations.
Thanks, John. That's right. We do have a lot to share. But before we begin, I wanted to tell everyone why we included storytelling in this program. We've learned from our own experience as well as from experts like Harvard Business Review and other research that turning presentations into well-told stories is a significantly more powerful and believable way of communicating information. People don't buy a product or a service or an idea. They buy the story that's attached to it. So we've included some information on this concept. I also wanted to remind everyone that we've provided a study guide with thumbnails of the slides and a place where you can take notes. The link was in the confirmation email.
And we'll also give you that link later today too, so not to worry. So let's get started. We want this session to be interactive, so let's take a poll right off the start here and we'll see where public speaking ranks in your mind. You should see a poll on your screen now. Please take a moment to complete it.
Okay, it seems like many people feel like he does, so everyone's not alone. I'll close the poll, and we see that that tends to be the #1 fear.
That's right, Phyllis. Public speaking is one of the top 5 fears of people everywhere. In many polls, it ranks above death, flying, spiders, and the fear of heights. Now, both Phyllis and I were just like you when we began. We both worked for Xerox, me in technology labs and Phyllis in field sales and management, when we got tapped to become trainers at their international training center in Leesburg, Virginia. Now, we were excited, but we were also quite nervous. It meant high-level exposure in our careers, but also lots of stress. Even the validation interview for the job was nerve-wracking. 6 managers evaluated us while we made a 15-minute presentation that seemed like 15 hours.
Oh, John, you are so right. I can remember those days. I remember how scary it was for me. You know, for my first 2 years, I trained 2 groups of 25 sales reps and managers every week while being observed on closed-circuit television by corporate senior management. It was a major move for Xerox in the technology field, and I was the technology sales facilitator as we trained 4,000 copier salespeople to look for network and production sales opportunities. I remember thinking, would all this technology be boring to copier people? How would I handle the facilitation in groups of 25 managers? Would they even believe me? After all, I'd only been with the company 7 years, and most of them had 15 to 35 years experience. Like speech writers tweaking a speech or a sales rep perfecting their pitch, the writers were making changes in the training material every night for months. I thought I might not remember the new words, the activities, or I was doing the same thing over and over. I thought, did I tell that same joke to this group earlier today? But with coaching from experts and lots of encouraging feedback and practice, I succeeded in becoming the lead facilitator and eventually a worldwide training manager.
So, what can you expect from this program? Well, we'll provide you with some information and insights on the entire process, from organizing your ideas to continuous improvement. Your success depends on your commitment. Your only limitations are those you set on yourself.
And John, we'll discuss how to make your storytelling more memorable. You know, stories build trust and they develop relationships. Think about some of the most memorable presentations you've seen or heard. You may remember only a few sentences, if any, but you do not forget how they made you feel or what they made you do. We'll also help you have more impact using your voice and body language.
And most presentations include a question and answer period. People worry that they can't answer the questions or someone will challenge them to a debate. We'll talk about preparation techniques to help you reduce your stress and welcome these sessions.
Usually at the end of the sessions, you want the audience to take action. You can't just hope people will ask for a product or a service or support your idea. You must tell people what you want them to do next and make it easy for them to do it. So we'll give you hints and tips and processes from the experts.
Now, Phyllis, I know you teach a course on event project management at George Washington University. So I was delighted when you suggested we include content from your module there on presenting and accepting awards.
Oh, thanks, John. There is an art to putting people at ease and ensuring it goes smoothly. I'm sure everyone will appreciate the information and view the next award show differently. And John, your suggestion to include how to deal with hecklers and distractions was a good add as well. They can be difficult, but our tips should help everyone handle them more effectively.
And finally, we'll provide some tools and tips to help you continue to improve and make each presentation better than your last.
That's a great list, so let's get going. Imagine you're in one of these situations. You just gave your elevator speech to a hot prospect, and they asked you to come make a presentation to their team. Or perhaps you're new on the team and the boss asked you to make a presentation on the marketing strategy for the new product assigned to you. Or perhaps you feel passionate about a civic issue and now you have the opportunity to speak before the county council. At first you're elated. In your head you're singing your praises about snagging the opportunity. Then it hits you. What am I doing? What have I got myself into? I have no clue how to organize this thing. How do I know what to include? What will keep their attention and not bore them? How much should I tell them? And at what level should I speak? How will I know they're convinced?
Well, here's a few tips to get you started. First off, don't start by firing up your copy of PowerPoint. It will only constrain you at this point. Instead, go analog. Use paper and pencils to start. Start by gathering the forms we'll provide and your study note guides, and then find a quiet spot to work. Now, the first thing you want to do is define your subject. You may already know the topic, but you'll need to decide the perspective and the depth of your message. And much of that depends on the allotted time you have for your presentation and your desired outcome. Now, we've created some forms to help you here. They're available on our website at salestrainingsolutions.com/forms, and don't worry about trying to get that link now. We'll give it to you later, and we'll be sure you get copies when we're done here this afternoon. Now, the first form is the presentation planning form. So start by drafting a topic in pencil on this planning worksheet. That's the forms are going to give you later, but you're seeing it here. Next, state the purpose of the storytelling session or presentation. Why you're going to be there. Is it part of a larger event, a meeting, a celebration? And what do you want the audience to do at the end of the story or presentation? Buy a product? Vote for you? Provide feedback on your marketing plan? Feel more confident about planting orchids? Or sign up for your yoga class?
That's a good start, John. And the next form is for analysis of the audience. Start by writing some notes about what they already know on the topic. What do they know about you and your expertise on the subject? Use the demographic worksheet in the free forms area of our website to create a picture of the audience, including the size. Notice there's a box for venue. This will provide keys to the media you require and the level of sophistication of the atmosphere. Use the key points in the area of the planning worksheet to list 3 to 5 major points in your presentation. And use this form the content notes pages to make notes gathered from various sources such as interviews, website searches, books and periodicals, could be electronic or hard copy, and be sure to include statistics and definitions or stories to support your point. Also, note the source of your facts. Your story must be compelling and the audience must be able to relate to it. Also, it must have a good beginning with a struggle or an obstacle to be overcome. The middle with a contrast in either emotion or content or the delivery method. And then at the end, it resolves the problem and makes the audience the hero, whether it's one person, a small group, or it's 50,000 people in Yankee Stadium. And finally, what do you want the audience to do after the presentation? Make it clear and make it easy. If it's not clear or easy, they won't put forth the effort. Now, once you have your basic story written, you want to refine it and have someone review it for grammar and ensure it achieves your objective. Your manager, a colleague, or a friend can fulfill this role for you. And as you write the story, there's some things you want to keep in mind. So let's take a look at those, John.
Always begin your message with impact and make it memorable. You've got to capture their attention within that first 60 to 90 seconds or they'll tune you out. To make it memorable, include a story. Storytelling isn't just for the campfire, family gatherings, and the pub. It's the next big thing in business as well. We've already passed the information age, and we're now entering the dream fulfillment age. And storytelling is a critical skill in this era. Bo Eason, storytelling coach, award-winning actor, and former football star, says the more personal you make it, the more universal it becomes. In business, customers or prospects want to hear how other companies overcame challenges similar to theirs and how they were successful with your product or service. People want to relate and connect on the social level too. They want the success you or the people you've helped have achieved. One key is that it must include the challenges to sound authentic. It's also beneficial to use photos, models, and other visual aids. We think in pictures, we remember in pictures. Think of the last time you gave directions. For example, go to the McDonald's up the street here and then turn left. And then go until you see the big blue house with a white picket fence. The place you're looking for is right across the street from that, and so on. We use pictures as landmarks because it's far easier to remember that big blue house than it is to remember a specific street address.
True, John. And in addition to visuals, the use of sound or music, if it's appropriate to your theme of the story, can add another dimension to your presentation and make it memorable. Think of the soundtracks of great movies. You probably recognize themes from movies such as Star Wars, or Goldfinger, or Bodyguard, and my favorite, Titanic. Sound helps make them memorable. Incorporating as many senses as possible helps reinforce your message. Use descriptive and persuasive language. Descriptive words help bring concepts to life. For example, the big gray wolf with the large fangs was directing his beady eyes on my throat, and he was drooling for a bite of my neck. Didn't it make it much more descriptive than for me to say, there was a wolf nearby and I was really afraid? How do you want the audience to feel? What sensations do you want them to remember? Provide a note paper or learning journal as we've provided to you. Writing in the journal, filling in a form, or participating in an activity also reinforces the message and makes it more memorable.
As Phyllis said earlier, people buy from people they trust. Memorable stories build trust and develop relationships, and stories allow you to connect with your audience. Phyllis, I think this is a good time to stop for 2-3 minutes and get some comments from our attendees and answer those questions. So if you have a question, please enter it in the question box in your GoToWebinar control panel on the right side of your screen. It should look something like you see here, the lady with the questions. Or if you can raise your hand by clicking the hand icon in the attendees listing, again in the control panel on the right side of your screen.
Oh, I see one here. John said, how long should the story be if it's an opening story? And I think that's a good question. If you have a whole dialogue to present, the story might be as short as 2 minutes or maybe around 6-8 minutes long. It depends upon the point you want to make. Just make sure that everything you include is really important to the story that you're telling. I think that was a good question, John.
People usually spend more time planning and preparing for their vacation than they do for their career or important events like a presentation or telling a great story to get the audience's attention for their product, service, or cause. But planning and practicing your delivery is crucial. You've got to be comfortable with all aspects of your presentation. On the other hand, a memorized speech is not usually a memorable speech. In some situations it's required, such as in political situations or certain award ceremonies where exact wording is required. But for the majority of speeches, practice and some handy notes is the best approach. Start by rehearsing the flow of your concepts using 4x6 cards. I like them better than 3x5 cards because they're easier to keep track of and easier for me to read.
You're right, John, they are. And on this subject, there's varying opinions. I like to practice out loud, and I like to emulate the setting. I remember one time my neighbor mentioned she saw me through the window. I was at the dining room table talking and gesturing, but she didn't see any guests at the table. So the next day she asked if I had ghosts for dinner. I explained I was rehearsing new training and I wanted to practice with a setup like my classroom. Beth and I had quite a laugh, and she's reminded me of it several times since.
Yeah, that's a good one. And I like to practice as well. I'll even set up my camera and record myself. Then I use our observation sheet and critique myself. And when I think I'm ready, I'll have a friend or a colleague or my most difficult critic, my wife Sally, watch me do a run-through and then critique me.
That's the best practice. I always think everyone should practice with the audio-visual or models they'll be using in their presentation or story. It's been interesting to me in my work with business TV broadcasts, webinars, seminars. The people new to presenting and the senior executives want to run through the presentation with lights and audio and any other effects one more time in the venue before showtime. Yet the middle managers are the ones who tell me, "Don't worry, Phil, I've got it. There's no need to rehearse."
Oh yeah, I know those guys. That's interesting, but perhaps that's why great speakers like Steve Jobs, the Roosevelts, and say Winston Churchill are also well remembered. Stories abound about their relentless practice, so they could get everything from their concepts and graphics to their delivery techniques just right.
That's right, John. And our audience can check out YouTube for some speeches, like Steve Jobs' announcement of the iPod and his 2005 speech to the graduates at Stanford University. That was really memorable. I have two final comments before we move to our next topic. First, everyone should time their speech. You and I have discussed the number of words per minute spoken as we prepared for this webinar. Recording's a good way to check your time and your pacing and pausing. Finally, don't practice until you have your speech memorized or you're so sick of hearing it that you become bored with it. When your critic says it's good, you're good to go. And John, I wanted to talk about the impact of voice for a moment. Many speakers worry that they'll have a shaky or a weak voice, and others worry about the volume. Can I reach the back of the room? Your confidence and strength can come from confidence in your content and practice. Volume can be managed with a good sound system. But what is not often considered are the other qualities that a voice can add to storytelling.
Okay, Phyllis, so what kind of things can people do to give their voice greater impact?
Well, let's begin with the simple things first. You don't know how you sound until you hear yourself. Many people are reluctant to record their voice, but it's the best way to hear what your audience hears. Play back the recording and listen. Pace is something that many people struggle with in presenting. When we're nervous, we rush through what we have to say. Pacing can help you stress the important words. Inflection can also help you emphasize key words. Placing emphasis on certain words can convey emotions such as passion, pain, caring, and commitment. Look at your text and choose words that should be emphasized. I like to bold them in my speech. Pausing after important points can add impact and let the audience know what you think is important. Some speakers repeat a few important words for emphasis. I often listen to the famous speakers just for style. Using these techniques can add interest and get cheers rather than snoozes.
Now, one of the things that bothers me most is what they call spacing or thinking words, such as and you know. Now, we often hear those in interview sessions on talk shows or on the news, but it's better to take a second or two of silence than to constantly use those words. I remember being taught to write my thinking word on the back of a card and put it on my desk to remind me not to use it. Another good practice is to use your smartphone or your tablet to record a voicemail message you plan to leave or your notes from a meeting or conference, and then listen to the playback. You'll quickly uncover your filler words as well as your speaking pace and modulation. It's definitely worth the time and effort.
You're right, it really is, John. And I think the last hint in this area is also easy, and I'm still working on this one. Learn to fully breathe. Most people run out of breath at the end of a sentence. So, the sentence ends on a down note, making the ear of the audience think you're finished. Standing tall, taking a full breath, and speaking using your diaphragm will allow you to finish on an up note. The listener will then be anticipating your next thought. John, these are great tips for voice, but what about body language?
Well, I'm glad you asked about that. Much of the research on nonverbal communication indicates that over 65% of communication is nonverbal, and that people decide to listen to someone based on their first impression. Yet many people pay little or no attention to the nonverbal messages they're sending. In his book, Louder Than Words by Joe Navarro, a former FBI special agent, he says that nonverbal skills are more than just what we do physically when speaking. He says it also includes neatness, punctuality, preparedness, attentiveness, and hard work. The key to success with nonverbal communication is awareness of these factors and focusing on creating comfort and trust. As we said earlier, practice will build confidence and comfort with your content and delivery. If you're comfortable, it helps make your audience comfortable. Sharing your story with passion and feeling will resonate and build trust with your audience.
And speaking of comfortable, I've noticed that you don't always have to have a business suit, but you should be neat, match the setting, and dress one step above the audience. How you dress communicates respect for yourself and for your audience. Good grooming also indicates respect. There's a magic in a smile. A sincere smile includes not only the muscles surrounding your mouth, but also those crow's feet near your eyes. And elements such as our posture, eye contact, and movement play a role in our ability to communicate and connect with the audience. I've seen people slouching, looking down, or standing on one spot for the whole speech, and other people pace up and down like an animal in a cage or demonstrate other restless movements.
Yeah, I know, they can be very distracting, and you can lose your audience's focus on the topic as they try to follow you around the stage. You do, however, want to have good posture and good eye contact, making sure you view each section of the audience and making eye contact with one or more persons in each section. Gestures also require careful attention because they can mean different things in different cultures, and you might unconsciously convey things you definitely don't want to communicate. Our in-depth training course will cover the most effective body positions and movements.
Good points, John. And speaking of gestures, I see lots of hand waving in the Q&A sessions. I think we should take a moment to dispel some of the fears of these sessions.
Good idea. Good idea.
Preparation, rehearsal, and poise are keys to successfully handling a Q&A session. The first step is to anticipate the questions. You may not have been able to cover everything about the topic in the story or presentation. You can brainstorm with a friend or a colleague about possible questions that can arise. Then you can list them on a 4x6 card, as John prefers, and write out your response. Practicing the responses will help you sound smooth and feel confident. Don't forget to make sure the response relates back to your key points. Check your notes to ensure you have defined any jargon or technical terms that you've used and that you've chosen the best words to convey your meaning. That will eliminate some of the questions and misunderstandings.
Now, I also find that taking a few moments of silence to gather my composure and collect my thoughts before answering is a good idea. Even though you may have rehearsed a response, silence communicates that you're considering the question. It also gives you time to sort out poorly stated questions.
Good point, John. And we both do a lot of international training, and we discuss the importance of repeating the question. It helps clarify the question, it ensures everyone heard the question, and it buys the presenter time to choose the best response.
Yes, and if it's a big audience, you should have assistants who can get a microphone to the audience member with the question so everyone can hear what's said.
True, and finally, it's important that your nonverbal cues communicate you're strong and confident. The tips that we gave will help with that, and there's many more of them in our full course. Let's talk about endings. Ending on a high note is always a topic in my university course. I tell my students that people remember several things about an event, a story, or a presentation. They remember how they felt, they remember the beginning, and they remember the end, but they often forget what happened in the middle. It's kind of a blur, as long as it wasn't a disaster. I often provide the ending of a cruise as an example of ending on a low note. The vacationers are all sitting in the hallways with their little overnight bags waiting for the color of their luggage tags to be called so they can disembark. What a downer to a great vacation. At least Princess Cruise Lines, and this is not a commercial for them, has tried to remedy it by showing a movie and they interrupt it to call the tag colors. Well, all those with the blue, everyone with the pink tag, you may now disembark. So it's a little bit better, I think. My opposite example is the truly memorable ending to an event put on by General Electric. It ended with a memorable comment. Then they had this fantastic fireworks that included the GE logo in the middle of the fireworks. And they had music of a well-known song. Everyone left humming the tune, and they were on such a high note. What a great ending. In fact, I'd love it if people would just type in the chat box some positive or negative endings they remember.
Okay, so if you go to your webinar control panel there on the right side, you'll find a chat box, and you can type in there what you would like to tell us. And we'll take a moment.
Oh, and I see a lot of people commented about the ends of big events they had when they went to recognition events, and there they are with all their luggage just waiting.
Yeah. Great comments.
Yeah, great. Or people just close down the PowerPoint. Well, that's it. Thank you for coming.
Well, here's some tips to remember about creating great endings. First, tell the audience you're about to conclude, and then make sure you do so. Some people have several false closes, and that can irritate the audience and get them to leave before the Q&A or the call to action. Once you say you're concluding, briefly review your main points so the audience remembers them, and then end with a brief but memorable comment. Now you can refer back to your opening story or theme, congratulate the audience on taking the action to attend, use a famous quote if it fits, or provide a challenge to take action on what you've told them. And you might also ask them to repeat some phrase you told them several times in your speech.
You're absolutely right, John. And don't apologize or just stop. Have a great ending that provides for applause or a segue to the question and answer session. John, you mentioned about my award ceremonies discussion. So let's take a minute and talk about award ceremonies. We see in this picture some trophies, but an award can be anything: a certificate, a long service pin, a trophy like the Oscar, or the green jacket in golf. Award ceremonies are important events in people's lives, and yet we see so many awkward moments in award events. The recipient wants it to be memorable, and the presenter wants it to go smoothly, and they want to look professional. The short exchange should be well structured, and the message should reflect a heartfelt acknowledgement of an achievement. A key to success is to prepare the comments acknowledging the accomplishment of the recipient and including the challenges that he or she may have overcome to reach that level of success. To appear nice and smooth, the presenter needs to know the length of their presentation, where to locate the award, or who will hand it to him or her, and from where. The photo area should be marked on the floor with an X. And the presenter should know where the recipients are located in the audience to coordinate their comments with the time required to reach the presentation area. Then, if the awards are on a table, the presenter must know the order of the recipients relative to the placement of awards on the table. For example, left to right, front to back.
And as a recipient, it's nice to know, it's nice to have a surprise, but it's also very uncomfortable to be expected to say a few words of gratitude and without having an advanced knowledge of that expectation. Recipients also need to know what they'll be receiving. For example, the Oscar weighs 8.5 pounds. Probably every nominee knows that, but sometimes a picture gets presented and it might be heavy or unwieldy. Recipients need to know what to expect so they can be prepared to handle it properly and not drop it and look like a fool. They also need to know what type of response, if any, is needed so they can prepare their comments. So as part of our package, the forms page on our website contains an award speech form outlining the format for an effective speech. I'm sure you'll find it very useful and easy to use. So Phyllis, what's next?
Well, John, our next item is information on working with technology. This is something that can be distracting for both the speaker and the audience if it's not handled properly. Let's start with the audio part of audio visuals and then move to the visuals. Audio equipment can range from a simple PA system with a microphone and a lectern to an extensive concert or production stage setup that can have multiple screens. That's usually found in big events. Most frequently, speakers will be provided with a lectern microphone or a lavalier type mic. That's the kind that includes a body pack as often seen on the TV shows. And the lavalier is a preferred because it provides the greatest impact because it doesn't restrict the movement of the speaker. Now here's 2 important tips for using a mic. 1, test before the event time to ensure the volume and the quality are right for you. And 2, remember to turn off the mic when not performing. There have been many embarrassing situations with this last hint. Private conversations have been broadcast to the whole audience, and I know you've heard on the news that it's gone viral on the internet for some. Also, I know, John, you and I have saved a day turning off the system when the speaker's forgotten to turn off the mic and you see them headed for the bathroom.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And finally, if the presentation includes recorded music or live musicians, we recommend practice for the incorporation and someone to cue the speaker at the right note. Also, don't forget to contact ASCAP or BMI to pay the royalty fees.
Good advice. Now, in addition, here's some tips for using visuals. Computer-generated graphics, lights, and special effects can be exciting, motivating, and entertaining for an audience. First, we recommend using a remote for your PC, as it removes the location restriction and lets you be more engaging and conversational. Second, we suggest more pictures and fewer words in your slides. A festival of slides with text is boring, and we've all seen those. Remember, people think in pictures, so provide memorable pictures and practice coordinating your talk track with those pictures. A good resource on this topic is Nancy Duarte's book, Resonate. So don't forget to time your presentation so you don't need to rush through. Your audience will be sensitive to that. If you're including video or website projection, have them queued up and practice multiple times, transitioning from one and then back to the other. Also, one person should be responsible for all the transitions, or errors are much more likely to occur. And finally, with attention-getting special effects like descending balloons, confetti, fog, pyrotechnics, fireworks, or digital avatars, rain and snow and so on, it's critical to practice and include professionals. That's especially true with fog and fireworks, which will almost certainly require fire marshal permits. Use these special effects at the end of the event so they don't affect other presentations, or even worse, land on your guest dinners.
John, I have a final note on this based on several experiences that I've had. An IMAG screen, which is those gigantic screens, should be used with over 200 people, or if you're in a venue with partially obstructed views. This enables the projection of the current or concurrent action, so everyone has a good view. I also have used rear projection to hide the equipment for speeches at formal dinners, or to hide the audio-visual expert when the speaker's a non-tech type. And let's see, last thing, we have a bonus here.
Yep, here's a bonus item for you. We want to provide a few words about handling hecklers and distractions. So let's take the easier one first, distractions. A number of things can be distracting to a speaker. First, you understand that with larger groups, there will always be someone leaving to go to the restroom or to take phone calls. But if your audience starts looking like deer in the headlights, or you sense they're drifting off, it's probably a good time for a much-needed break. Offer a few minutes for coffee and a bio break. You might also need to increase your physical movement or modulate your voice to regain their attention. Don't be put off by coughs or sneezes. If the person feels the need, they'll get a drink, a cough drop, or a tissue, we hope. How about whisperers in the audience? You got those? The folks seated near whisperers will usually shut them down for you. Something else in this area is lateness. Late arrivals finding their way to a seat is always a distraction, and it can be especially distracting if it's the senior person in an audience. So 2 tips. If it's an attendee, and depending on the size of the group, you can make a comment and allow for them to offer an apology. Now at Xerox, in our training sessions, you used to make them sing or contribute $1 to a charity or to a group treat. On the other hand, if it's the senior person who's missing from your audience, check with the second in command to see if you should start or offer a short break until that senior person arrives.
Good information, John. And the second part of this topic is hecklers. And they're a real challenge for speakers, even many experienced ones. My training on this topic began way back when I worked for the telephone company, and we had training for dealing with difficult people. The advice not only works for difficult people, but hecklers as well. Their first advice was to pause, acknowledge the interruption, and get a cue from this person. If the person is rude, then be very courteous and polite. If she's angry, remain calm and pleasant. Above all, do not mirror their behavior. If you get very quiet, it's shocking to the heckler, and not what they want. They want a debate. I liked Lady Bird Johnson's tactic when she allowed the heckler to say his piece on her husband's stand on civil rights, and then she replied, "This is a country of many viewpoints. I respect your right to express your own. Now it's my turn to express mine." She often got applause for her reply, and she quickly regained control of the situation. A quiet pause can show how rude they're being, and it can allow security to remove the heckler or the audience to shut him or her down. Planning ahead can be very beneficial. If you're speaking on a controversial topic, anticipate some angry interruptions. Plan your response to the anticipated statements of the opposing view. Most comedians have a great one-liner prepared to respond, but that may not always be the right response depending on the topic and the situation or your personality. However, remaining calm and confident is always beneficial.
Oh yeah, that's great advice. That's good advice. Well, look, we've covered a lot of ground here. Now let's take a look to the future. We're getting towards the end here, but really, it's just the beginning. We suggest several courses of action from here. First, if you like what you've seen and heard so far, you can sign up for our full 8-module course on storytelling and presentation with style and confidence. We'll be sending you an email to remind you about that one. Second, study the great storytellers and presenters. You can find Steve Jobs videos on YouTube. Watch others like Sir Richard Branson, Sheryl Sandberg, and Ellen DeGeneres. Listen to some Bruce Springsteen's lyrics. He's fantastic at painting pictures with his lyrics. Watch a Walt Disney movie. Oh, I love those. And notice how they focus on the details and draw you into their story. The TED Talks are particularly good. Now, if you've never heard of them, just go to TED.com. That's TED.com. There's a whole catalog of talks, and none are longer than 18 minutes. Andrew Stanton, who wrote Toy Story, is among my favorites there. His talk is absolutely great on how the stories behind movies capture your interest. Next, make a note of the positives and negatives you see on television and at events. Keep a list of the do's and don'ts you see. Take just one skill at a time and work on it. It takes time and practice. You can't expect to go from where you are today to becoming a storytelling superstar like those we just mentioned in just a week. But you can become an outstanding storyteller or presenter with practice. So practice, 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 and get good feedback. Since you're watching the replay of our live event, you should have already downloaded your copies of the free forms we referenced in the webinar. We hope you find them useful in preparing for your next presentation. Over the next few days, you'll receive a copy of our ebook, followed by a white paper titled The Value of Storytelling. Then you'll receive your invitation to enroll in our full 8-module course on storytelling and presentation skills. If you want to feel more confidence, attract more clients, make more money, or just get lots of applause, then this course is for you. The course starts with a live session for the first module on November 12th. Followed by these weekly modules, and runs through January, with a 2-week break for the holidays. We'll resume on January 7th and finish up in February with 3 additional bonus modules. If you liked what you heard today, please tell your friends about us. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you in the full course in November.